Hello and welcome to Timing is Everything. I'm Mary Crowe, the Education Specialist at Care Dimensions. Today we're here with attorney Arthur Skarmeas, and we're going to talk again. Arthur joined us on our last show, and we actually talked about Advance Directives. And it was such an important show that I wanted to have him back because it's just a half hour isn't enough time, Arthur, to talk about these very important topics. So I wanted to have you back on the show so that we could readdress some things, kind of recap what we had talked about, and also talk about some other things we didn't get a chance to. So before we start, just tell the audience, for people who didn't see the last show, a little bit about yourself.
Well, just briefly, I'm an attorney for the past 33 years, and my office is up in Topsfield, and one of our specialties is elder law, Medicaid planning, how to save money when it comes time to, if your loved one has to go into a nursing home, and also how to make some deal with the issues that come along with when people are dying, when they're heading towards the end of their lives, making sure they make the right choices, so that they don't have to worry about those things as that time comes.
Yep. You know, and I tell people out there, because again, I do a lot of programs and all, and talk about the importance of advance directives, and I do also talk to them about when you do pursue legal advice or assistance, that it's very important that you have an attorney who's actually well versed in this area with elder law, estate planning, that sort of thing, because it really is a specialty.
Yeah, it is, and for the most part, most of us out there, if we don't do something particularly well, we send clients to people that do it well. But you know, you do want to make sure that whoever you hire is, and this goes really for any area of law, you want to make sure that they're well versed in that particular area, you know. And so when you need some help with end of life and estate planning, you want to go to somebody that specializes in it. And you know, if you want to make sure you're doing the right thing, that's what you really should be doing.
Well, because these laws change.
Laws
right?
change all the time. You know, a lot of states have continuing legal education requirements like they do in other fields too. And that's because the laws are constantly changing, and what you might have done 2 years ago is not what you should be doing today. It may not be what you're going to be doing in 5 years from now. So you always have to be up to date and make sure you're getting the most recent and the best advice.
Yeah, good advice. So tell us, let's go over, because I want to just again recap what we had talked about the last time in terms of the categories of advance directives and just the importance of those tools. So you want to talk about those for a few?
So yeah, and not to go too far as for what we said the last time, but you know, advance directives, the first thing you have to remember is that it's what many people would call a living will. We don't particularly have a specific statute for it in Massachusetts, but it's still a key document that everybody should sign. It really is, to simplify it to the simplest form, it's a designation of what you want done if it comes to the point where you are no longer able to make decisions for yourself, and when you have reached the point where you're essentially irreversible coma, brain dead, the doctors have certified that you're not going to have any more meaningful life. This is stating what your wishes are, which should be followed at that point in time. And even though we don't have a specific statute in Massachusetts, I think what I said last time, it's important. It still is evidence of what you want done, and that evidence is still good if brought to a court. So therefore, in most instances, it's going to be followed without too much pushback from anybody else.
Yep.
If you don't have that, then you're in a situation where, you know, somebody else has to try to make a call, whether they want to make that call. Can they make the call? Can they say, take my mother or my father off life support? It's a very difficult thing to do if you don't know what that person's wishes are. If you do, it's much easier. And the other thing is that if you don't have it down, not only do you have a problem with somebody maybe making the call, but you could have a dispute among family members, which could end up in court. And you definitely don't want to be in court when you're in a situation like that.
Right. So that's the living will component in terms of, again, because, you know, so we'll talk, the healthcare proxy, which is, like you said, who you're going to appoint when the day comes, right? We'll all get there at some point when the day comes that we're on. So we have a picture of the healthcare proxy up right now, which is important. And again, so just give a kind of a little recap on the healthcare proxy and its importance.
Healthcare proxy is really one of the most simple documents we as lawyers do. It's very specifically tailored to our state statute in Massachusetts. It really is the form that designates who it is that's going to be able to communicate with your physicians, your healthcare providers, When you are not able to, it's going to be the person that can gather the information, can then give permission for certain treatments to occur. Without that in place, then the hospital or the physicians or whoever's providing your health care does not have anybody to communicate with, and the family loses the ability to try and work with the hospital to make sure that the patient is being cared for the best way. Oftentimes, somebody ends up having to rush into probate court to get appointed as a guardian, which is something that you really don't want to be doing. Again, when somebody's in the midst of serious medical treatment, it's something that's number one, it can take a while. Number two, it's costly. And number three, this is a situation that generally requires an immediate response. So it's crucial. Everybody should, and we said this last time, everybody should have a healthcare proxy, 18 and above.
And there's no reason why they shouldn't, right?
There's absolutely
so
no
again,
reason.
we're talking about, and it's certainly something that you as an attorney does, who does estate and this type of planning, but really, it's not, it can be done without an attorney.
Yeah, healthcare proxy is one of the documents one of the only documents that as a lawyer I would feel safe saying to people, if you want to make sure you do it, you can do it at home, you can go online, you can print out a Massachusetts healthcare form, various sites. There's a Massachusetts state site where you can print it off of. You also can get the forms in certain places. You can ask your doctor and they will have forms and you can sign it there. So it's easy to do, and really nobody should be without a healthcare proxy.
Right. And in one of those, the Patients' Rights Act, or the 1990 Reconciliation Act, says that any institution, right, that has accepts Medicaid, Medicare, has to have the healthcare proxies and to give those to you. So there's no reason why they shouldn't have them.
And the only reason, and the reason that you don't want to wait until you're in the hospital, though, is because you don't know what kind of condition you're going to be in. So you want to get it done ahead of time. It doesn't take very long. It's very easy to do, and you don't even have to come see somebody like me. You can do it by yourself.
So the easily accessible, no cost. There's no reason why, and 18 and over, this shouldn't be done. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about why it isn't, because we just said there's really no excuse for this, but yet there are reasons why people don't do it. So, all right, so that's the healthcare proxy. So again, it gets filled out, it goes to, the original stays with the person, right?
Usually, and you'll give a copy to your, I tell clients, give one to whoever's in charge of your medical care, if you're a primary care physician, or if you have more than one doctor that you see on a regular basis. Usually now, with the way that the computer program works for the hospitals, it gets into the system. Everybody can see it if they have to pull it up. Not from different different groups, but get it on the record with the doctor, and then it's always there. You don't have to worry about it. If you change it, you have to make sure you give the new one. But if it's there, it's going to be there for you.
Right. So because if you do, and that's the problem for some people, is that every time you're going in, they're giving you a new form. And again, the one with the most recent date is the one that's valid.
The most recent one is always the valid one.
So a lot of times, again, people will bring these in. Sometimes they're not dating them, and they're not getting them done. Those are null and void, right? They got to make sure they fill these out properly.
Absolutely, and it's not hard.
No,
I mean, the forms are pretty much self-explanatory. So if you take just a few minutes, you'll be able to do it without a problem.
Absolutely, All right, so, and then you talked about the living will, and again, I think part of the problem is that sometimes even when we do, and again, the statistic last I heard was about 25–30% of the population. Is that still what you're hearing in terms of who fills the number that really completes these?
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in that range of a quarter to a third of the population, and it's just that I think it's people know that they should do it, but they definitely put anything else that's on the list of things to do above it because it's something that they don't really want to think about. But I mean, it makes life a lot easier for the people that are dealing with the issues when something happens to you as the person that should have the form filled out.
Absolutely. So, all right, so that's the healthcare proxy. So we talked about, and again, the living will piece. And like you said, even though it's not necessarily legal in the state, it provides guidelines. Because even when people have these healthcare proxies, the problem is that they're not having the conversation with the people who they have as their proxy.
So anytime that you do any type of a form that involves giving somebody else authority to do something for you, In this case, we're talking about a healthcare proxy, but it could be a power of attorney. It can be a will. It can be anything like that. You always want to make sure that you tell the person, ask the person, that you want them to do this for you, because they don't have to.
Right.
So you could nominate somebody and the person could just say, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And there's no law that's going to make them do it.
Yep.
So number one, you want to make sure that they're going to do it. And number two, you want to make sure that they understand what you want done to the extent that you can explain things. I mean, you're not going to know the specific circumstances of any particular time that it may be used.
Right.
But you want them to have a general idea of what you would be looking for when you come into that type of a situation. So in order for it to work the way it's supposed to work, you need to communicate with the people that you have designated.
Yep.
And that's the only way you can be sure it's actually going to move in the direction that you want it to move in.
Yep.
I may have said this before, but once in a while somebody comes back. It doesn't happen often. Oh, I asked my brother, but he doesn't want to do it.
Yep.
I mean, so it can happen.
Sure.
I mean, just because you've nominated somebody doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Yep.
And if you've nominated somebody that doesn't want to do it, it's just the same as not doing it.
Right.
So
Yep,
it's
that's
very
right.
important to have the conversation.
And that they're, again, so that they are capable of following through on your wishes too.
That's right.
Because not everybody can. And that's important that you know that. If you don't feel comfortable following these wishes of mine, I don't want you.
Right.
Right? And that's important to have that conversation too, and oftentimes that's not happening.
Yeah, so that percentage of people that have done a document like this versus who haven't, if you then take the number of times that they really don't have a conversation with somebody, it probably halves that again.
Yes.
So you have, maybe you're down to 1/6 of effective documents out there.
Right, right,
So
exactly. I think people are under the impression that family, again, is going to be able to have this, to be able to make these decisions. That's not true at all. It doesn't matter how close the relatives are. They don't have legal authority to make these decisions without having one of these forms in place.
They don't have legal authority, and what it can lead to is not only somebody not being able to do it at that moment, but if you then have to go, say, and try to be appointed as a guardian, well, maybe there's going to be more than one of you that wants to be appointed as a guardian, and then you have another issue where you have family conflict arising from something that could have been taken care of pretty easily.
Sure. So then it can be contested.
Absolutely.
And again, this cannot be contested. This is a legal document. You're putting it in place.
Once it's done, it's done.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
it has to be followed.
Yep.
So no questions about it.
Absolutely. The other piece is that, again, people worry about losing control. Like, I'm going to sign this document. Oh my gosh, I'm giving up. People are going to be making decisions on my behalf. Can you speak to that some more?
Well, when you're talking about a healthcare proxy, you're talking about something that is only going to be put into place when you cannot make a decision for yourself.
Yep.
So therefore, you're not giving up any control. As long as you have the ability to make a reasoned decision as to your health care, then you're the one who's going to make that decision. The only time that that's going to be taken away from you is when you medically cannot make the decision. And then the healthcare providers are going to go to the chosen person to make that decision. Now, hopefully you've had talks with them, as we just said, and so you have the person that you've picked to help with those, to make those decisions. And then, as in most cases, they're not put into place. I mean, there's plenty of times they are put into place permanently, but there are a lot of times it's temporary. So you know, 2 days later, you've come off the medications, you're better, you can now make the decision again. It goes right back to you. So you're not giving up any control at all.
So, and again, I think that's really important that people understand that, because there is the assumption that, again, people are giving that up. And really, the doctor has to determine capacity, and they have to actually write an order and a note.
The way that I talk to my clients about it is that you're actually maximizing your control, because you're choosing the person that you want to make the decision for you when you can't. So therefore, there's no question that what you want to be done is going to be done because you've chosen the person. If you don't choose the person and do one of these documents, then you are giving up control to the extent that you don't have the person you necessarily want making the decision. So you're actually keeping more control over the situation.
It's almost a counterintuitive point.
It is.
People feel like they're giving up control when, in essence, they're really taking it.
It's true.
So, all right, so it's just so important with these forms. So, and then again, if you just want to just do a quick review, the durable power of attorney is kind of that other category within this advance directive piece.
So the power of attorney is again, simplifying it down to its basic, it's for everything non-medical.
Yes.
So when you need somebody to do taxes for you, or to banking for you, or to, sign insurance documents, or go to the registry of motor vehicles, or do anything like that, that person that you designate as your power of attorney is going to be the one that can do that. And it's the big difference between the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy is the healthcare proxy is only good when you can't make decisions. The power of attorney is actually good as soon as you sign it.
Yes.
But if you don't give it to anybody, they can't use it.
Right.
So, but it's again key. If you run into the situation where you have a sudden illness or an accident or something like that and you can't act for yourself, you need somebody to be able to take over that. And again, you have the conversation with them about how you want things handled if something does happen.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so if you had to say, because again, I hear people, what is the most, if I have to pick one thing to do, what's the most important document to have done right away?
Well, I say all the time, the simplest function that I perform in my office are the healthcare proxies and power of attorneys. I kind of group them together because kind of one goes with the other.
Yep.
And very rarely do I do a power of attorney and not do a healthcare proxy. And even though you can do a healthcare proxy yourself, if I'm doing the power of attorney, I'll do the healthcare proxy with the client. Or if they ask me to do the healthcare proxy, I'll also do the power of attorney. To me, those are the most important documents. If nothing else, you're going to do nothing else, have those documents so that if something happens to you, there will be people able to act for you right away. Now again, these are while you're alive. These do not have any effect once you passed away. But you want those in place because these are situations where people, your relatives, your friends, are going to have to take active control of certain things. If you do not do them, you're going to be in a situation where nobody can do anything unless somebody goes to court for you. And again, you don't really want to be going down that road. Court, lengthy, time-consuming, costly, and you don't necessarily get who you want. So, I mean, it's really the most simple thing, but the most important thing.
And like you say, just you won't get who you want, so you're losing control again.
Absolutely.
And the other component is, like you say, most times these are urgent situations. All right, so those are the documents. So why do people not do this? It just makes so much sense. Why do they not do it?
Well, now you take me into the role of psychologist, and there's various reasons, I think. But I'll tell you why I think it's because the most common, there's always something that, not for everybody, but there's usually something that happens in people's lives that send them to me to do their estate planning. And it's when they realize finally that, maybe they're not going to live forever. Or, what I say all the time, and I probably said it last time, everybody thinks dying is for the other person, but not for them.
That's right,
It's also an uncomfortable thing to talk about.
Right.
So, I have clients that have waited 5 or 6 years from the first time that they've come into the office. I've had a couple longer, before they finally finish their documents, and it's because they know I really believe most people know they really should be doing this, but they put anything else that comes up in their life goes to the top of the pile. This goes to the bottom of the pile. And usually, I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's, my husband's brother died suddenly, or my, there was an accident and so, had a serious injury. And that precipitates the call to the office, and that's what starts them on the road because something like that happens. But it really is, I think, the combination of you just think you have plenty of time, so you'll do it later. And it's just not, who wants to talk about coming in and talking about what's going to happen if you get really sick or really hurt or you die? Nobody really wants to do that.
So the culture of denial comes in there, so people don't want to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen, right? Again, the loss of control. Then you have family cultural issues that come into play. I mean, people handle things very differently. And in some, again, family cultures, they just don't talk about this stuff. So, and some people, again, feel like it's like giving up hope.
It's the same thing that I have come to learn in your profession. People wait too long to get on hospice. And there's so much that hospice can do for them to make their lives better and more comfortable and happier when they reach that point in their lives. But they wait and wait and wait because they just don't want to, I think, deal with it.
Sure.
It's the same thing that happens in my profession. It's, we wait and we wait and we wait, and eventually, hopefully they get there before something happens, but oftentimes they don't.
Yeah.
And, I've always said more people die without a will than die with a will.
Wow.
And so, they just never get around to doing it.
Yeah. What a mess, though.
It can be. Whenever you hear those horror stories about probate where something is dragged out for years and years and people are fighting over, sometimes not even a lot of money, it's always a situation where almost always a situation where there was no will, no documentation, nothing was done. The person just passed away and left everything basically to chance. And while there are state statutes that will specifically say who's supposed to get what, it allows a much more opportunity for there to be contesting that, for families to object, for families to fight over it. It just opens up that whole possibility. And that's, people are afraid of probate court, but if you do everything the right way, there's nothing really to be afraid of in probate court. It's when you don't do anything that probate court can become a problem.
Sure. It's so, when people have advanced illness or they're at end of life, certainly, it's a heavy burden, for family members to have to make what appears to be life or death decisions for that person. But what I tell people is, if you have your healthcare proxy, if you have the conversation and let people know what you want, really they're not making life or death decisions for you. They're following through on your wishes.
Right.
So it certainly helps to alleviate some of that stress and the guilt that people can feel as a result of this.
I can only tell you that it's happened dozens of times when people have come, when the children of people that have done their estate work with my office come back in, maybe to probate an estate or do something like that. They will tell me how smoothly things went and how it made the best of a bad situation for them, and how relieved they were that everything was taken care of. It's not by accident that happens. When everything is lined up, then the process becomes very easy for the people that really should be more focused on, taking care of members of the family and making sure everybody's okay, rather than worried about, what's going where. If you do everything right, you basically open a drawer and everything's there, and you just follow the instructions. It's like getting a set of instructions with something you're putting together. You just follow the instructions, and you're fine. And there's really no opportunity for anybody to object. So the amount of stress relief that I get from hearing from people that come in and tell me this is it tells you exactly what's going on.
Oh yeah. So we talked about the barriers. And you mentioned that, again, these families coming in saying this is really helpful. So the reasons why we should be doing this are plentiful. So again, that's a main reason, is that, and it really does relieve family stress, doesn't it? It just makes it so, I mean, you're dealing with enough when you've had a major loss and things like that, or somebody's really very ill.
This does not, the last thing you want in that situation is for there to be no direction, and to not know what the person wanted, or to have, and it's not always siblings, but siblings fighting over what they think dad would have wanted or what mom would have wanted, when it could have easily been solved by just putting things down in writing. And when somebody's going through a serious illness, or when a family is going through the loss of somebody, it's just the last thing that the family wants to deal with. And again, if they take care of everything, they're not going to have that issue come up. Most of my older clients that come in and do estate planning do it for one reason, and that is they want to make sure that their family isn't burdened by what they have to do after they pass away. And they're 100% right. That's why you do it. You're thinking of who's coming behind you, and you want to make life as easy for them when something does happen to you. So, it's again, it's easy to say. Again, it's harder to do. When people come in the office and I always tell them I'm the worst case scenario guy. So I say, so if you die and then your kids, because you have to go through that process to see how they want things taken care of. But it's really important to do it, even though it's not, the most fun you'll have all day. It's really important to do it.
Well, and there are some resource tools in terms of the living will part, in terms of making those wishes known. You know, there's 5 wishes. Again, and they'll bring up a copy of that 5 wishes so that people can see, you know, what that looks like. That's a useful resource, right, in terms of getting those wishes down.
That's a great resource just to make sure people understand what you want.
Yep.
And I mean, you can certainly, you know, some people have literally written out, you know, 5 pages of instructions, which would encompass some of the things that are in the 5 wishes. The 5 wishes, that makes it easy to put the major things down.
Yep.
And you know, I tell people to do that and keep it. It's not something that I do, obviously, in the office, but
Right.
but fill it out and put it with all of your important documents, and it will help the family again navigate through what needs to be done when the time comes.
And then another version is honoring choices, right? Another useful tool. And again, they can bring up a picture of honoring choices. You know, there's a copy of the guide right there. So again, yet another resource that can be used. So there are things that can help in terms of guiding that process, because sometimes you sit and you don't know where to start. So, and then, you know, the thing too also is MOLST, you know, so can you just say a few words about the MOLST?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last time, and we may have run out of time, but really that's something that you do and you should do between you and your primary care physician usually, but it may be another physician depending upon what you happen to be going through at any particular given time. And it essentially becomes kind of a medical order. So it's not subject to interpretation. You've come to this, you sit down, and I don't know that it's used enough, and I shouldn't say this because I don't know 100%, I'm not in that field, but based upon clients that come to me, I don't know that it's really used enough between the physicians and the patients at this point in time. That's my feel.
Yeah, and it should be, because this is, like you say, you're absolutely right. This is a medical order form. So where you were talking about legal documents with the healthcare proxy, durable power, and again, the living will in some states, not Massachusetts, but those are legal documents. This is an actionable medical order form. And that medical order, again, this is something that should be for people who have an advanced illness or a frail, and or one who would have a do not resuscitate, that sort of thing. They should be having this conversation, and that form is to really have those conversations with your physicians about what you want and what you don't want.
Everybody that has, you know, we'll just call it an advanced illness of whatever type, should have this discussion with their physician and should have this form filled out with their physician. A lot of times I talk to clients and they have never heard of it before. And I know they've been going to the doctor. So it concerns me that it's not out there, because there's nothing I can do about it other than tell them, you know, talk to your doctor about this, and hopefully they'll talk to you about it. And I think it's becoming more and more common, but it still has a ways to go before people really know what it is, and physicians do. But it is kind of it is a very important document for people that, again, are in an illness, a terminal illness, something that they may be coming toward the end of a life, or maybe not even particularly terminal, but a serious illness that could cause the end of life. It's something that should be used. It should be used all the time.
Absolutely, I agree. So we got to wrap up. Tell the audience how they can get a hold of you.
Well, if you want to get a hold of me, you can call the office at 978-887-0093. Or you can email me at askarmeas@skarmeaslaw.com.
Great.
And we'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, good. We have the
anytime.
contact information up on the screen. But again, you know, these are so important, the conversations, and I greatly appreciate your coming back twice, because like I said, there's really no time frame that's sufficient to have these kind of conversations and the importance of these documents. So I hope that these shows have really motivated people. You know, there's a National Healthcare Decision Week in April, and it's really that critical that people start having these conversations. So I hope that this helped and do with that.
Hopefully, yeah.
So
absolutely.
thank you for being
Thanks,
on
Mary.
the show.
I've worked in a lot of different settings, and I have never seen the care, love, and support that I've experienced with Care Dimensions.
Because it's about the patient's quality of life.
We provide care during one of the most challenging times in a family's life.
One of the things that we really focus on is how people want to live their life.
We have transformed the way our community experiences end-of-life care. It is more than hospice. It is care for advanced illness.
At Care Dimensions, we'll take care of your family like you're a part of ours.